Hello folks, welcome back to Dead Set Anime. I got a question in the email from somebody who actually applied my texturing technique, and he had a question for me. So let's go ahead and get started answering his question. At first I was a little bit annoyed because because the question is a mathematical question, and I'm often surprised by how little mathematical foundation many have whom I interact with about 3D animation and modeling. I mean, most of this stuff is junior high school stuff. It's not hard at all. But this was a good question. So he applied my texturing technique, mostly the cross hatching, because he too liked the comic book look of it all. But the question that he had was, with my technique, was this. When he zooms in, the model looks fine from back here. And it looks nice and comic booky and like a nice little ink rendering. But when he zooms in, the cross hatching gets big. And his question was, how does he regulate that? How does he modulate that so that when he zooms in, he don't have to go back into the graph editor or go back into the texture editor and manually change that with each shot? So the answer to that question is, of course, expressions. And basically what I do is I ask myself what I'm trying to do. Here, what I think he's trying to do is he's trying to basically set the size of the texture of the crosshatch based on the distance from the camera. So we're talking about two things, vector and distance. So that sounds like a vector magnitude question. And so what I did was I went ahead and applied vector magnitude, and I'll show you that. So this is skin. I've already set up the expression for expedience. And we'll go here. And as you can see, I call it crosshatch. This is the expression. I set up two things. First, I set up a camera target, and the camera target is, oh God, how many layers did I go down? The camera target I put inside of his head here, like this big red knoll. That's the camera target. And then I set up a face camera, which you can see down here. So let's go back into VPR. Let's open up the surface editor. And so the graph editor should already be open. And so I used the expression VMAG, which stands for vector magnitude, face camera, world position time. And we're using world position, not individual channels, because what we want is the sum of all three positions relative to the sum of the camera target. And what I did was I multiplied that times 1.5 to set the size. However, this area of the expression back here can be anything. You can set it to a null if you want, and use rotation and make that whole thing dynamic and animatable. But for now, we'll just leave it there at 0.15. And the outcome, whoops, excuse me, I forgot to turn the expression on. So for crosshatch, from that layer, we're just going to apply the expression to all three channels since we're using world position. That's the vertical. And we need to set it for the horizontal as well. So Yeah. And you can see it's got 3 here. So we're going to need a total of 6. Okay. And we're back in camera view. And as you can see, the cross hatching is much finer. And as I move the face camera out, it maintains a nice ratio. It's much finer here, and that's the reason why I would use a null to modulate that as the camera comes in or out. But in general, this is basically how you do it. And to show what's going on, I just do the perspective view. Let's get a nice zoomed view here. And we can see the very fine cross hatching as soon as this thing renders up. You can see the very fine cross hatching now that looks more inky and pencily. We're going to move the camera while in perspective mode, and you can see that as I move the camera away, the cross hatching gets larger. And then as I push it in, the cross hatching gets finer. Now there are some limitations to this. Number one, if you have a scene that uses multiple cameras, then you run the risk of having to set one camera or the crosshatch camera's distance so that a shot from another camera will work while the crosshatching is the way you want it. So those are the limitations, but in the end, this is a nice, simple solution to the problem that he was having. And if you're just using a single camera, then vector magnitude will work perfectly, and you won't have to go in and do much of anything when you want a close-up shot or when you just want to zoom it out and get a standard shot. Okay? And that's my video addendum for today.